Where does the Iran war go from here? Three weeks ago, the Middle East looked like it always does. Fragile, managed, held together by enough mutual self-interest to avoid the worst. Then the US and Israel killed Ali Khamenei, and everything that everyone had spent 40 years trying to prevent started happening anyway. On 28th of February 2026, the United States and Israel launched coordinated strikes on Iranian leadership, military command, and nuclear infrastructure. The operation was called Epic Fury. The name turned out to be accurate. Khamenei was killed. Iran's chain of command, which had never actually been tested without him, fractured. What came back wasn't a coordinated military response. It was a swarm, ballistic missiles, drones, over 1,000 projectiles aimed at US bases, Israeli territory, and the Gulf states hosting American forces. UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain all took fire. Dubai's airport was struck. Qatar suspended LNG exports after a drone hit its production facilities. The Strait of Hormuz, the narrow channel through which 20% of the world's oil moves, effectively closed. Oil hit $100 a barrel, then kept going. The IEA called it the worst supply disruption in the history of the global oil market. That's not a sentence anyone had written before. Let's stay on the strait for a moment, because this is where the conflict stops being a Middle East story and starts being everyone's problem. The Strait of Hormuz is 17 miles wide at its narrowest point. 17 miles. Through it passes roughly a fifth of global seaborne oil, 20% of the world's LNG, and the economic lifeline of Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, the UAE, and Qatar. Iran doesn't need to sink ships to close it. It just needs to make the insurance risk high enough that operators won't send them through. It's doing exactly that. The knock-on effects are already visible. Asian economies, which take 84% of the crude and LNG that moves through the strait, are scrambling for alternative supply at panic prices. Europe is not far behind. Wood Mackenzie has put $200 a barrel on the table as a real possibility if this doesn't resolve within weeks. That's not a forecast. That's a warning. Here's the part the headlines have been underplaying. The Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, are not passive bystanders. They are targets, and they are caught between two things they cannot reconcile: their security dependence on the United States and their physical proximity to Iran. Dubai has been struck. Qatar has been struck. Bahrain issued public shelter-in-place orders, and these are countries with almost no domestic water supply. Qatar and Bahrain are 100% reliant on desalination. The UAE is over 80%. Qatar's own Prime Minister said publicly that if Bushehr is hit, the Gulf gets contaminated and Qatar runs out of drinking water in 3 days. That's not a projection. That's the government's own simulation result. The Gulf states want this to end. They are applying every diplomatic channel they have. The question is whether Washington, and whatever's left of Tehran's command structure, is listening. This is the hardest variable to read. Khamenei is dead. The IRGC is still operational, but its political direction is unclear. Rosatom, Russia's nuclear agency, has lost contact with Iranian nuclear industry leadership. Their phones aren't being answered. That detail matters. It tells you something about the level of internal chaos. Iran's economy was already broken before this started. 40% inflation, a collapsing real, years of sanctions and mismanagement. The strikes have made it worse and removed the one figure who held the ideological coherence of the regime together. What comes next is genuinely unknown. A negotiated pause, a hardline successor who escalates, a fracture between IRGC factions, some combination of all three. The most dangerous scenario isn't a unified Iranian retaliation, it's a disorganized one, where nobody is in control of the weapons. The strikes hit Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan, enrichment facilities, not the power plant. Bushehr, Iran's only operating commercial nuclear reactor, sitting on the Gulf Coast, containing 72 tons of active fuel and 210 tons of spent fuel, has not been struck. The IAEA chief has been explicit. A direct hit on Bushehr would produce a very high release of radioactivity into the environment. Evacuation orders would be needed for areas within several hundred kilometers, including Gulf capitals. Desalination infrastructure contaminated, food supply restrictions, the works. Israel announced it had struck Bushehr on 19th of June, then immediately walked it back. A mistake, they said. The regional reaction was instant. Oman circulated civilian nuclear emergency instructions. Bahrain opened 33 shelters. That tells you how close everyone believes we are to that threshold. For now, Bushehr is off the target list. The question is how long that constraint holds if Iran finds a way to reconstitute enrichment capability, or if someone in the Israeli or American chain of command decides the risk calculus has shifted. Russia is the quiet winner here. It is a major non-Gulf hydrocarbon supplier. Its stocks are up. Every day the strait stays closed is a day Moscow sells more oil at elevated prices to energy-starved Asian buyers. China is watching carefully. 84% of the oil that transited Hormuz in 2024 was bound for Asia, most of it for China. Beijing has enormous economic exposure and zero interest in this escalating further. Whether it has the leverage to influence the trajectory is another question. The US stock market has been remarkably calm, down only about 3% year to date. American defense and energy companies are among the conflict's direct beneficiaries. The war, from Wall Street's perspective, is happening to other people. That assessment may not survive contact with $90 petrol and an inflation spike. Three plausible trajectories. First, short war, managed off-ramp. The strikes achieved their stated objectives. Iran's nuclear program has been set back years. The regime, leaderless and economically broken, accepts a ceasefire through Qatari or Omani mediation. The strait reopens. Oil comes off the boil. Markets recover. This is what Washington says it wants. Second, prolonged stalemate. Iran cannot win but won't formally concede. The strait stays partially closed. Oil holds above $100. Global inflation bites. Asian and European economies slow sharply. The Gulf states absorb ongoing low-level strikes. The war becomes a grinding feature of the international environment, rather than a crisis with a resolution. Third, escalation beyond the current frame. Bushehr gets hit, accidentally or otherwise. A radiation release contaminates Gulf water supplies. A Gulf state suffers infrastructure damage serious enough to trigger a broader response. Houthi intervention intensifies in the Red Sea. The conflict pulls in actors who have so far stayed on the sidelines. Analysts are currently pricing trajectory 1 as most likely, 2 as increasingly plausible, and 3 as the tail risk nobody wants to price. The problem with tail risks in this region is that they have a habit of not staying in the tail. Three weeks in. Hormuz closed, oil above 100, Dubai's equity market down 30%, and a nuclear power plant on the Gulf Coast that everybody, every government, every analyst, every intelligence agency, is hoping nobody makes a mistake near. History doesn't always oblige. We'll keep watching.